When someone starts a new business, one of the first questions they ask is, what is the best marketing strategy for a new business? Most of the advice sounds something like this: post on social media, build funnels, run ads. But there's a big problem with this advice. These are tactics, not strategy. Because the biggest challenge a new business faces isn't promotion, it's uncertainty. You don't yet know who your best customers actually are, which problem matters most to them, or why exactly someone should choose your solution instead of all the alternatives that already exist. So the real question isn't what tactics should I run. The real question is, how do I learn what actually works in the market as fast as possible? And that's where most founders misunderstand marketing. Because early stage marketing is not about optimization. It's about learning faster. It's about compressing time. The best marketing strategy for a new business is actually a learning system, a structured way to form assumptions, test them in the market, learn from feedback, and refine your strategy over time. Not a campaign you launch, a learning system. In this video, I'll walk you through the exact frameworks that help founders do exactly that. Because once you stop chasing tactics first, the real problem becomes much easier to see. Let's zoom out for a moment. You just launched a new business. You've built something you believe solves a real problem. But the truth is, you're still guessing. You are guessing about who your ideal customer is. What message will resonate best? What problem people actually care about the most? And this is completely normal. Every new business starts with assumptions. But those assumptions need to be tested in the real world, and as fast as possible. Because markets do not reward guesses. They reward learning. So instead of trying to design the perfect marketing launch campaign from day one, a much smarter approach is to design a system that allows you to answer 3 critical questions as soon as possible. Question number 1, who is the customer? Question number 2, what problem matters most to them? Question number 3, why is your solution better than alternatives? If you can answer these 3 questions clearly, everything else in marketing becomes much easier. Your messaging becomes clear. Your ads become more effective. Your content becomes more relevant. And most importantly, your product becomes much easier to sell. So the entire purpose of early stage marketing is to discover the answers to those questions. And there are specific frameworks that make this process dramatically easier. Let's start with the first one, problem-based segmentation. One of the biggest mistakes new businesses make is trying to target everyone. They say things like, our product is for entrepreneurs, or our tool is for marketers, or worse yet, they switch to demographics, and say things like, our target audience is 25 to 45-year-olds, university graduates living in larger cities. But those groups are far too broad. Within any large group, people experience completely different problems. That's why proper segmentation is so important. Segmentation means dividing the market into groups that share similar situations. It's groups of people that have one common denominator. And the most useful segmentation for early stage businesses is problem-based segmentation. For example, within marketing professionals, we might see several different segments. One of them could be in-house marketers overwhelmed by internal feedback, or startup founders running their own marketing without clear frameworks, or freelancers struggling to create consistent client acquisition. All of those are marketers. But each of these segments experiences different frustrations, and that difference matters. Because if the problem changes, the message, the offer, and the positioning all change with it. And when you group people by shared problems, your marketing becomes dramatically more relevant. Now you can say, this solution was built specifically for this situation. But segmentation alone still leaves an important decision. Which segment should you focus on first? Once you identify possible segments, the next step is targeting. Targeting simply means choosing one segment to focus on first. And this step often feels really uncomfortable. Because choosing one over the other feels like you are excluding potential customers. But targeting doesn't mean you'll never serve other audiences. It simply helps you create focus during the early stage. For example, in my case, I could target many different audiences interested in marketing. But the segment I'm most interested in helping first is overwhelmed marketers whose work constantly gets reopened. Once the primary target is chosen, we need to dive deeper and understand them properly. Understanding your customer. A very useful way to understand your customer is to dissect a chosen audience through three lenses: jobs, pains, and gains. This is where the market starts becoming visible, not as a category of people, but as specific lived situations. Let's walk through this using a real example. Take my situation. After spending more than 20 years working in marketing, I've systematized many of the problems marketers face. Now I'm turning those frameworks into a YouTube business and educational products. So my starting assumption is that my ideal audience is overwhelmed marketers. They can work in-house or they can work on the agency side. It doesn't really matter. Now, instead of describing them with demographics, I will analyze their situation using the jobs, pains, and gains approach. Let's start with jobs first. Jobs describe what someone is trying to accomplish, and we can think about them in three layers: functional jobs, emotional jobs, and social jobs. Functional jobs are the actual tasks people need to accomplish. For example, working out and confirming marketing strategy with stakeholders, planning marketing campaigns, making decisions about channels and content. Emotional jobs are how they want to feel while doing the work. Any marketer wants to feel confident and in control, clear about what to do next, being sure that what they will bring to meetings will be considered good enough and get the approval. Social jobs relate to how they want to be perceived by others. Every marketer wants to look competent in front of leadership, strategic in front of clients, and reliable in front of their team. That tells me what they're trying to achieve. Now I need to understand what makes those goals difficult in real life. Next come the pains. Pains describe the problems and friction people currently experience while trying to perform those jobs. Again, we can think about these across several layers. There are practical frustrations. Decisions keep getting reopened. Marketing work goes through endless iterations. Projects take longer than expected. Then there are emotional frustrations. How they feel when those friction points occur. Constant uncertainty and stress. Second guessing their own decisions. Difficulty switching off after work. And then finally, there are social consequences. They start to look disorganized in the eyes of decision makers, disconnected in the eyes of friends and family. Now, once the friction becomes visible, the next question becomes obvious. What would better look like instead? So finally, we'll look at gains. Gains describe what improvement would look like, what your audience wishes would replace the problems they currently experience. What can I replace their current frustrations with? Marketing frameworks to reduce internal debates. Shared structure for feedback to attach to. Specific decision frameworks that actually stick so their work stops getting reopened. As the result of that, emotionally, they would feel more confident, more in control. And socially, they would look like strategic thinkers rather than overwhelmed executors. Now, these are still assumptions, but you now have the full map which needs testing in the real world. And once that map is visible, you can stop thinking about the market as one blurry group. You can start seeing distinct types of people with distinct problems. This context becomes the foundation for everything else in early stage marketing strategy. Because once you clearly understand the audience, the next step becomes much easier. Now we can think about awareness. So let's talk about customer awareness levels. Before we craft messages, it helps to understand that not every potential customer is thinking about the problem in the same way. Before purchase, people move through stages of awareness. Awareness towards the problem they are experiencing. First, there are people who are unaware. They already experience frustration and inconvenience, but don't look at it as the problem just yet. Then there are people who are problem aware. They have now connected the frustrations they have into a structural problem that needs solving and start looking for possible solutions. Not specific products just yet, but overall possible solutions. Next are people who are solution aware. They know solutions exist. They review them, pick one, and start looking for the products that they need to implement a chosen solution. As a fourth level, there are people who are product aware. These are the people building a short list of products and comparing them amongst each other, looking for the best fit. And finally, as the fifth level, there are people who are most aware. They already know your product and just need a final push or a trigger. Most of your business potential currently resides in the early stages of awareness: unaware, problem aware, and solution aware. Serving these people is basically creating new demand. You are educating them into realization they have a problem that needs solving and guiding them towards a solution. Now, if I apply this to my example of overwhelmed marketers, I might see something like this. Some marketers are feeling stressed due to decisions being reopened, but haven't diagnosed the root cause yet. The next group understands that the cause for all the friction is the lack of clarity and structure in their marketing processes. They start exploring possible solutions. It could be outside help, could be internal training, could be some specific frameworks. Then there are product-aware people who, in my case, already landed on coaching and training program and are comparing available offers on the market. Finally, most aware. These are the ones who have decided on a specific coaching training offer and just need to feel safe enough to pull the trigger. Understanding awareness levels helps you design the right message for the right audience. Addressing marketers in their current state of awareness means having different messages to meet each group where they currently are and help them move one step forward. But even before you choose the message, you still need one more decision. Which part of the market are you actually going after first? Which brings us to clear positioning framework. Positioning answers a simple but powerful question. Why should this specific group of people with this specific problem choose your solution instead of all the alternatives? What makes your product the best fit for this specific group of people to solve that one specific problem? A positioning framework that I always use connects four elements. First, the audience. Who exactly is this for? Second, the problem. What problem do they currently have? What pain are they currently experiencing? Third is the product advantage. What makes your solution uniquely helpful? And fourth is the alternative. What are people currently doing instead? Now, using my example. Audience: overwhelmed marketers whose work keeps getting reopened. Problem: decisions are driven by opinions instead of structured thinking. Advantage: a structured marketing decision framework. Current alternative: endless meetings and subjective discussions. Now the offer becomes clear. Instead of vague marketing course, it becomes a solution to a specific frustration. And notice something important here. Once segmentation, targeting, and audience analysis are done well, positioning becomes much easier. Because the problem is no longer vague. You have the full list to choose from. The context is already clear. Now we know exactly whose situation are we solving, what friction are they currently experiencing, and what alternative they are stuck with today. That gives us the strategic clarity. But now we need to express that clarity in a way that market actually feels. So let's talk about the persuasion ladder. Once you know your audience and positioning, the next question becomes: how do you communicate the value of your solution? One useful framework I always use is called the persuasion ladder. There are 6 layers of value you can use to describe any product. Product features, product benefits, problem solved, the enemy product fights, how life gets better, and the audience transformation. Let's get back to my example. Feature: structured marketing frameworks. The benefit it creates: clearer marketing decisions. The problem it solves: marketing work stops getting reopened repeatedly. The enemy it fights: opinion-driven marketing chaos. How life gets better: you stop taking work stress home every evening. And finally, the identity transformation. You become a confident strategic marketer. Now understand that these are only the examples. These are not the only right answers to those questions. You can list all the features at layer 1. Each feature leads to one specific or even several benefits. You can list them at layer 2. Then you can list all the problems your product helps solving, the enemy or several versions of the enemy your product fights. Then how life gets better, all the life improvements your audience gets as the result of your product. And finally, the audience transformation. Think of it as a structured way of thinking. The deeper you go on this ladder, the more emotionally powerful the message becomes. Because people don't buy features, they buy better outcomes. They buy relief from frustration, and they buy progress towards the person they want to become. Now, once you understand these 6 levels, the next step is learning how to compress them into value propositions you can actually use in your messaging. Which brings us to 3 depths of value. Here's the approach I always use. The most persuasive way to describe value is with a simple 2-part structure. I offer you this so that you get this. Functional level. I offer you this feature so that you get this benefit. Problem-solving level. I will help you solve this problem so that you experience this life improvement. And identity transformation level. I fight this enemy so that you experience this identity transformation. Each layer connects the offer to a deeper outcome. And the deeper the outcome, the more meaningful the value becomes. Now, here's where it connects back to awareness. If someone is solution aware or product aware, feature level or problem level value propositions may work very well. That's because they already understand the problem and they are now comparing different ways to solve it. But if someone is earlier in the journey, problem aware or unaware, messaging that names the friction clearly and shows the life improvement or identity shift can be much stronger here. So awareness tells you when a message should be used, and the value ladder tells you how deep the message should go. That combination is what makes messaging precise instead of generic. But even with strong positioning and messaging, there is still one final step: testing it in the real world. So let's talk about testing assumptions in the market. This is the step where strategy you have turns into learning. Once you have a hypothesis about your audience, positioning, and value propositions, the next step is to test it all. This doesn't require huge budgets. In fact, early experiments should be small and fast. You might run small ad campaigns, publish targeted content, reach out to potential customers, conduct interviews, offer early versions of your product. The goal here isn't perfection. The goal here is feedback. Here you want to answer questions like, does this audience recognize the problem? Does this message resonate? Do people understand the value? Are they willing to pay for the solution? Test different problems, see which resonates the most. Test different benefits, see which one gets the most traction. Every iteration here brings you closer to a strategy that actually works. Over time, patterns emerge. You see which audience responds best, which messaging creates engagement, which positioning creates the most demand. Once you establish these, lock them in. Because once the pattern is clear, strategy stops being a hypothesis. It becomes a system. And system is something you can double down on. That's how businesses move from uncertainty to traction. If you found this helpful, check the description and the pinned comment below for more helpful resources on this topic. And if you liked this video, you might appreciate this one as well. It covers persuasion science in depth. Thanks for watching.